Welcome to the Five Keys Keeping Pace podcast. My name is David Purnett. I'm a consultant for Five Keys schools and programs. Since 2003, Five Keys has gone into prisons and provided high school diplomas to men and women who earn them. We have 1,200 employees all in California. We're proud of the fact that 7 out of 10 of our employees share the lived experience to those we serve. In other words, we have been incarcerated. I did 5 years, 9 months, 23 days, and 6 hours in federal and state prisons for a white-collar conviction. In this Keeping Pace podcast, we reach my formerly incarcerated brothers and sisters and anybody who has been impacted by the justice system. We'll share stories and inspiration. Let's talk. Hello, Joe. Good morning.
Hey, Dave.
Joe Bourdeau, who I've known for a couple of years, actually about 4 years, and we'll get into that a little bit later. I've seen how you have greatly and positively impacted so many people, Joe, formerly incarcerated people, due to your philanthropy with Five Keys and your volunteer work with justice impacted people.
Yeah, what happened is I worked for a lady, ran her finances for a number of years, 20 years actually had, so I met her. And so she loved animals. And so she just said when she dies, she's going to leave money for animals. And so that's how we got invited and involved. And we really started out at the prison up in California Men's Colony in San Luis Obispo in the dog therapy program up there, which is amazing. Bonnie Bergen taught these people how to train dogs, and then they give them to these prisoners, they give them to PTSD veterans, and it's saving the lives of these veterans. But it's a program that, as you know, Dave, these dogs, if a veteran's having a nightmare, they go over and turn the light on, and they teach them how to open up cabinets and take, something to them that they need, and just a great program. And a lady up in Northern California invented it. So that's how we really got involved with that. 70 prisoners have gone through our program. None have reoffended because of love of a dog. And then in Coalinga, where I grew up, it's Pleasant Valley Prison. We're trying to get a guy out of prison right now. He's been in there for 30 years. And kind of the three strikes deal. And so we're working on that currently. But yeah, we do. We get thoroughbreds off the tracks and we take them into prisons, and then men and women train them. And then when they get out, they have a job in the equine business. And, basically they need a job. They can't really go back to the area they're in, and, without any jobs. So that's the amazing programs, the ones that you deal with. Five Keys, that's Caltrans. And then there's one that they hire these prisoners and go through the training for fire. So the Cal Fire. And yeah, it's just a really good success story because, you want these guys out and functioning instead of, being a blight to the society. So yeah, so it's pretty cool.
How many prisons do that equine program, Joe?
That's a really good question. In fact, my daughter who works with us, she's going to find that out. There's a great program, a great individual named Dave Duffield, and he gave $300 million to an animal program called Maddie's Fund. It was the name of his dog growing up. It's called Maddie's Fund, and they do incredible work in all types of areas for animals. So he spent, I believe, $100 million, and he bought 27 acres up in Reno. And what they do is they get rescue dogs, they come in, and then the veterans come in and stay in dorm-like situations and train these dogs to be service dogs. So that's one of the programs. And when I went into Pleasant Valley State Prison, they had a horse program. And I'm familiar with Harris Ranch in the San Joaquin Valley, and they had funded a horse program. So we went to that and we helped fund it's the Thoroughbred Retirement Foundation. And they're the ones that get the horses off the tracks, and then they turn them. Patrick Swayze was a good friend of mine. So his wife and I, his widow and I went into, it was actually death row in Florida. The last person in Florida to die in there was Elaine Morose or whatever her name is. Charlize Theron played her in the movie Monster.
Sure.
And
Sure.
she's the last one to die in that prison, but they have death row still. So they have that program in there, and that's where I really learned it. There was one for men in Coalinga, Pleasant Valley, and then there's one in Ocala, which is Lowell Correctional. So we'll find that out. That's a really good question. I think every prison in the country needs a dog program or a horse
Mhm.
program. It just changed the lives. And, if you really think about these dogs, they're coming out of shelters and they're usually abused. And so they come into the prisons, and the prisoners have been abused their whole life. And so they just have that love. It's these prisoners are saying it's the only thing that's ever loved them. I mean, it's just heart-wrenching, but heartwarming. And the sad part for them is they train them for 2 years and then give them away. So we try and get them another dog and that kind of thing.
Really something, Joe. I have to say, I was fortunate enough you invited me up to one of the graduations in San Luis Obispo. It was so moving that these prisoners, it just changes their lives. And what I noticed too was that it changes their families' lives. Several spouses got up and talked and spoke to how this was the first time that, let's say, her husband, a spouse's husband, had turned his life around, and just the testament to what these animals could do. It was just remarkable, Joe.
Yeah, no, it's amazing. And the horses too. When I met Netta, there's a really good movie called The Mustangs, America's Wild Horses, that we're trying to save all the wild horses in America instead of rounding them up and getting rid of them. But that's another subject. But it's funny because I always heard if you hug somebody, you need to hug them for 20 seconds, then the hormones and everything click in and your hearts connect. And I've just always heard that. And so I hugged Netta, who runs that program, and she says, "Oh my God, we do that with the horses." So she has them hug the horses for 20 seconds, and then their hearts and everything kind of combine. And so the love just is shared. And horses are so therapeutic anyway. We fund a lot of those programs too. So whether it's PTSD veterans or autistic kids, they relate to the horses, and so those are just incredible programs. It's pretty funny because the start of the dog program was Bonnie Bergen, and she started, I don't know, 30 years ago or whatever. But the funny part is she was in Mexico, and a guy was being helped to buy a burro. And someone said, what's that? And they said, well, it's a service donkey and it helps them get up and blah, blah, blah. And so she said, well, let's do that with dogs. So she's the one that really founded the whole idea. And she has a school, there's a school for it. And it's amazing what these dogs are doing, especially black labs. We take black labs in because they're probably
Interesting.
they're the smartest and they're the easiest to train. And where if 80% make it, 20% wash out from the training, and it's only about 20% make it as far as a rescue dog because they have to unlearn all the bad habits and stuff like
Mhm.
that. So it's pretty interesting. Pretty interesting.
Joe, how did this become a cause that you wanted to support?
Well, it was Myrna, my wife, and she said, "Look at this." And so then, it's close to us, so San Luis Obispo. So we went and met him and found out what it takes a year to fund it. And so we said, let's do it. And so it's an amazing program.
You have one of the most interesting lives that I have ever known. Just you have such a full life. It's just amazing. We're only going to get to touch on it just a bit today, but I know that you've mentioned that I know you're a writer and you've written several screenplays. What projects are you currently working on?
Well, I have kind of eight in various productions. The best one just came out Tuesday, and that's already done, and that's called The Golden Rule, and that is an amazing program because
Mhm.
they're growing hearts and lungs and different organs in petri dishes now, and then they put in the vaccine or the cancer treatment or whatever, and
Wow.
and it's 100% accurate. Amazing strides that we're making, and what that will do is stop animal testing. So, we kill thousands and thousands of animals a year to test, and the FDA is requiring that. where it's 10% accurate. So we're killing these monkeys and the dogs and beagles in particular, because beagles are docile. So we're on the result of helping and being 100% accurate to find these cures. We're hoping within 2 to 5 years to eliminate any type of animal testing. And so that just came out. That's called the Golden Rule, and that'll be out. That's being shown, I think, in Capitol Hill next week. But all these doctors and Rand Paul and Cory Booker and everybody were with that screening. So that was great. And then another one called Tiger in the Sea, which is a guy crash landed in the North Atlantic in 1962 with a bunch of military people on board because we were getting ready to kind of get ready to go to Germany and attack Russia if they didn't get on Cuba. So that is a great movie. It's a true story. Guy landed North Atlantic right by the Titanic, 30 to 50 foot waves, 30-mile-an-hour
Oh my
winds at
gosh.
night in the rain, and he successfully landed it. Unfortunately, they only had one raft, so some people drowned, but and hopefully that'll get made by next year. My family were the bankers who built Las Vegas, so I have a movie going on about Las Vegas and doing one with Amy Redford. That's a cool one. That's called Miracle in the Hills. That's a great book. Two doctors went into Appalachian in 1909 to cure people, but also to teach them. And so they taught these kids in Appalachian. It's still a school. It's a foster school program and across North Carolina still.
Your wife, Myrna, who I've met, works closely with you on some of your work. Can you tell the audience the role she plays in your work, Joe?
She keeps an eye on, the funding, but also she gets online and finds out what's needed, what programs. We'll talk to someone and they said, "Oh, I have a great program here, this cat program up in Sacramento," or I mean, we've even gone as far as Africa with Ellen DeGeneres' gorillas. That's how we met Ellen and Portia and Casey Rogers. Yeah, she helps, she finds those. And the cool thing about her, she worked for this lady for 20 years and I've knew her for 20 years. So, we knew each other and we know what this lady wanted and what she liked to fund. And so, if somebody comes up with something, we just go, we don't do that type of thing, knowing this lady and what she would have wanted. So she was really active and she actually loved basketball. She was a huge basketball fan. And so we support the girls basketball program at the university here. And
Oh, that's wonderful.
yeah, so we get to do a lot of fun things.
That's how you came to go to that event, David, with those retired basketball legends.
Yeah, I invited him. I funded the baseball program here, and the father-in-law of Bill Pintard, who runs the Santa Barbara Foresters. It's the most successful summer baseball college league. They've won the World Series 10 out of 13 years. And
Oh my
his
God.
his father-in-law is Bill Burka, who was a coach for the Lakers for 50 years. And then I played against UCLA and Gary Cunningham, and so he was one of the guys there. But the special guest was a friend of mine that just turned 105, so he was there too.
Oh my God.
105.
Yeah,
Amazing.
his last hole in one was 102 years old.
What's really interesting is I had lunch with this gentleman. What's his name, Joe?
Gary Cunningham?
No, the
Oh,
105-year-old.
yeah, Stan Clothier.
Joe invited me to a lunch 4 months ago, and Stan was at the lunch, and he was asking me about my prison work. And so at this lunch, it was really dominated by Coach Cunningham, who was an assistant coach at UCLA under Coach Wooden for 10 of those 12 championships, or maybe 8 of 10. And then he was the head coach for
Yeah,
2 years, and he actually has the highest winning percentage of any UCLA, any coach in NCAA history, including Coach Wooden. And then there was
Oh
Bill
my
Burka,
gosh.
who's 98, who really started scouting in the NBA. He was the pioneer for scouting, and I asked him how long he worked um, for the Lakers. He said, "I still work for the Lakers." And and so as we get up and leave after all the stories, I had so many questions because I am a former basketball player. Joe is as well, even though he does a lot of other things, including swimming. As I was walking out, Stan asked me, and we hadn't even talked. He said, "So how's your prison work going?" Just so unbelievably with it, such a
Yeah.
privilege to be with these guys. And then I also wanted to, Joe, give you some major thanks. I want the audience to know this, that Joe was responsible for me starting at Five Keys, that I'll get into in just a minute. I go into into the prisons, and we have a reentry program 3 months before men are released from Valley State Prison. We provide a 2.5 to 3 month program, and we build a resume with them. We build a cover letter. We go through mock interviews. We go through very thought-provoking presentations that are either motivational or give them pause. We go through financial literacy, etc. And I try to kind of make it creative and something special for them, because they all have such a desire to not come back, Joe, as you know, but they don't have the tools. And so I've always been a student of Coach Wooden and Coach John Wooden, the winningest basketball coach. He won 10 championships, as I mentioned, in 12 years for UCLA. And the number two guy has 4 championships, Coach K from Duke. So it's never going to be beaten. And I had mentioned to you, Joe, just in passing, that I've incorporated a lot of Coach Wooden, a lot of his quotes. And one of the biggest ones is really the 4 Ds to success: desire, dedication, discipline, and drill. And I found very early that these men, they all have the desire, but because of their life circumstances, they don't have the skill sets and the path to create and to develop dedication, discipline, and drill. And so I mentioned this to you, Joe, and I said, boy, I sure would like to uh, get them copies of their Pyramid of Success and like to bring that in the prisons. And you said, well, just contact the Wooden Foundation. They'll give them to you. I guarantee you, this is a great cause. I'm meeting the chairman of their board at church in LA. We're picking up the first supply of 20 books, Joe, that we will be handing to the inmates at Valley State Prison.
Wow.
And it's just remarkable what you touch, and the ideas that you have that are so incredible, that have so much to do with my work. I cannot thank you enough. I've already incorporated the Pyramid of Success in my last group presentation, and they just ate it up. I had every single one of our participants. There are 15 squares in the triangle, and every one of them, we had 17 participants in our last class. They read it, and I asked them what they thought of it and their interpretation. They were very excited to receive these books, and we're going to break it down into assignments. And just can't thank you enough for that, Joe.
Oh, that's great. I saw where Gary Cunningham was glad you were doing it too. Gary was on one of the Wooden's first teams too. Not only did he coach there, but he was on the first team that went to the NCAA Final Fours.
He
Great guy.
sure was in
He's a
1963.
yeah.
That's sorry. Just a phenomenal guy, and thank you for introducing him to me. I just want to also let the audience know how I know you, Joe. So I was in prison for 5 years, 9 months, 23 days, and 6 hours. I was in 11 prisons, including county jails, and I did federal time and state time for a white collar conviction. I've been out for 7 years in September. And my wife at the time, who passed away from cancer, Maria, she rented a house from you and your wife, Joe, as you know. When I
Yeah.
was up in fire camp in Susanville, she rented a house that you own in Tahoe, which led to you, Joe, introducing me to Dave Bates, who is a real senior director at Five Keys, and my employment. And I'll never forget the day you and I met a few times, and you're always just so friendly, and just loved hearing all your life experiences, including being very. I want you to elaborate on this in a couple minutes. I know that you were very close with Patrick Swayze. You've got some great stories about him. But anyway, it led to my employment with Five Keys, And I just have to tell you, it been with Five Keys for not quite 2 years, as an employee and a consultant, and you were completely responsible for putting that together. And it has been life transformative for me as someone who just couldn't find my way. I just couldn't find my way in terms of a job. There was so much. That it goes against us as those that have served in prison. And so you gave me this opportunity, and it has been the most healing thing that's ever happened in my life. And it does not feel like a job. And so without you, Joe, this never would have happened. I want to personally thank you. And it's just you really changed my life. I just want to thank you for that.
Yeah, glad to do it. A lot of times it doesn't work out, and you're a perfect example of, well worth it, and I'm so happy for you. So yeah, glad to do that. That's the good part. I see a lot of the bad, the trafficking, the prison sentences and things like that. So that, you're a good reason for me to keep going too,
Well, thank you so
Definitely have.
much, Joe. Can you mention your friendship with Patrick Swayze?
I used to MC a celebrity golf tournament, and so everybody from Dennis Hopper to Swayze to Franco Harris and Johnny Mathis, everybody was there, and Cheech and Chong. So I got to know him, and so Patrick Swayze, he was the most famous guy there, and because of that tournament, we all went on a cruise. This guy who ran the tournament took us all to Venice, and he was just a really fun sense of humor. He's a real cowboy, Patrick was, and his mom was a dance teacher. So after school, he'd have to go to his mom's dance studio. So she made him get up, and that's how he learned. He ended up going to Joffrey Ballet, but and he actually did an autobiography, and it's pretty cool because it's his voice talking, so you can still hear him. And I have when he was fighting cancer, I have a recording saying, "I think I'm going to make it," and that. So. But
Ah,
the funny part is we were in Venice and all the shops were packed. So my wife couldn't even shop. So I'd go out and I'd scream, "Oh my God, it's Patrick Swayze!" And all the women would run out and mob him, and then my wife would go shop by herself in these shops. So I did that to him all over Italy, and he thought that was funny for some reason. Most people would kill you, and
yes.
and that he called up and he said, "I need my Bordeaux fix." He said, I'm gonna round up cattle. I want you to round up cattle in New Mexico." And it's in Las Vegas, New Mexico, and that's where he filmed Red Dawn. And it's pretty funny. The town square, he'd go, "That's where Charlie Sheen died in my arms." And he had all those stories. And then I spoke at his memorial too. But the funny part is he can't leave the house and he never slept. So at 3 in the morning, we go to Walmart and he finally got to go and shop. And I got on the intercom at Walmart and said, "Patrick Swayze's on aisle 5. Patrick Swayze." And I got him mobbed in Walmart. He had to sign autographs till like 4 in the morning. Even the store manager was in line.
Oh
And
my God.
and Patrick said, "I can't believe you want an autograph. Why don't you let me buy my stuff? Aren't you a store owner?" And so I used to do that. I danced with him. I sang "I've Had the Time of My Life" and danced with him. And we recreated the pottery scene from Ghost with him with a bunch of cowboys singing Unchained Melody. So he was pretty much up for anything. At his memorial, there were 300 people at Sony Studios, everybody famous but me. And I asked his wife if I can get up and be funny. So I was the only funny guy there.
Oh,
Yeah, so,
Amazing.
so so right before I got up, a guy came out and did a ballet dancing, black guy, ripped, orange Speedo on, he's spinning and jumping and everything. So when I got up, I said, "I can't believe that this guy bumped my dance number." And then I said, I should have known something was up when he wanted to borrow my orange Speedo. And then at the end, I said, "Lisa, thank you for sharing Patrick with the world."
oh,
It had to been tough being married to the sexiest man alive. My wife deals with it daily. And then I sat down. Whoopi Goldberg just started howling. Whoopi Goldberg emceed it. Kirstie
Oh my
Alley,
God.
Karate Kid was before me. Kirstie Alley was after. It was quite a
oh,
night. Yeah, Patrick would have liked it.
Unbelievable. I'm going to ask you some questions that are somewhat random, Joe. If there was one thing you could change about the prison system, what would it be?
Oh, it'd just be the money in it. It's just a huge corporate funding deal now. Every corporation's involved. I mean, we spend $420 billion a year on prisons. And if we could, cut that in half, 100, what, 210 billion, we could
Yeah,
save that. So, I mean, just in California, it's 130,000 a year per prisoner.
Oh,
Why don't we want to train them? Why don't we save that? And I think the idea is to give the wardens some incentive. They have no incentive. The more prisoners, the better. And so who's lobbying? And then private prisons, that's just inhumane. Those people are making billions of dollars, and then they're lobbying Congress for stiffer sentences. The kids that I find in prison, they've been in there 20, 25 years, and they were in a car in a drive-by.
right.
You know, you got to rehab them. I mean, why are we spending that kind of money on these people? And then, we're releasing them as animals. So I think, the statistics is we're 4% of the world's population, but 7% of incarceration in America. It's just a huge corporate deal, and something's got to change. We got to find them jobs, and we got to get them out. And I think if you put it that way, if you tell everybody your tax dollar, 50% is going to prisons, prison guards, prison wardens, feeding the prisoners, I think we can make some changes. So that's one of my big things. I'm actually trying to get Cuba to be a friendly nation. Cuba loves us. I've been there. We take bats and balls to the kids in Cuba. It's time for them to be a friendly neighbor. They 99% love us in Cuba. They're right next door. They hate Russia. They hate China. So there's just some of those things, I got a lot of those kind of things going on, but they're all very worthwhile and very important. But I think the big thing is stopping the prison industrial complex. I mean, if you look at every one of them, there's what, 158 private prisons in America? Really? Like, how inhumane is that?
It's crazy, Joe. I was in one of them, Pahrump, Nevada, in the Mojave Desert, about 60 miles or so from Vegas, brand spanking new.
Oh, yeah.
Just all the time and the facilities for us. And it's really interesting. The state of California, we just really don't have the resources. And so it's really interesting in the state, they have all these programs, and it's not, I had a 10-year sentence and only did 2 years. But in the Fed, they're very stingy, and I did because I had a hold 87% of my time. They don't give the good time. It's because of this financial
Oh,
conflict
it's
of
a
interest.
huge moneymaker. Core Civic is one of them. Corporations of America. I mean, it is just a huge, huge business. So,
And they run the commissary, they run the
uh,
telephone. I mean,
all of it. Yeah,
for for
every huge corporation's involved. It's
it's
just
it's just crazy.
Yeah, I think if we just get that to Congress and go, look, we're going to save half your money, California, half your money. We're going to give 25,000 to the wardens, 50,000 to the prison unions, and stop this craziness. And we're releasing animals. Every prison should have a dog and horse program.
They
Every,
really should.
yeah, I mean, they're we're euthanizing something like 1,000 dogs a day in California right now. You don't think they could go to a prison and be service dogs? As long as we're working on it, there's great strides.
Right. From a guy who is living a very full life. What's the best advice you've been given in your career, would you say, Joe, or some great advice?
Well, I really stemmed from a job I had. I was a sales guy at a bank, and so I just went and met people. But I just started really, I listened to Tony Robbins, his tapes way back, and it's just people, connecting to people. That's my joy, is knowing people. I get great joy in finding somebody like you and then teaming you up with Dave Bates and, those kind of things, John Cicero.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to get Keith Erickson out of prison. His mother talked him into killing her abusive boyfriend 30 years ago. He's up for parole in 7 years. So, and he's written a bunch of books. He's saved all these people because of the books and the program. So it's just Lincoln John Cesario, who you met with him,
Sure.
and he's really good at getting people's their record expunged, so these guys can't find jobs because it says they're a felon, and there's a way
Right.
to do that. So yeah, different programs like that. And I don't know where it came from, but I love people's stories and meeting people. So within a minute I know where they're from, what they do, and all that. So maybe somebody told me to do that way back. I think that's the most important, is connection to people, because we communicate, we're the only really animals that do that. And so that's very important. And that's so heartbreaking to see people in prison locked up like animals. It's
It really is.
hard to see.
It's so
Hard to see.
yeah, yeah. Joe, what would you say is one of your biggest successes? You've had quite a few of them.
Yeah, there have been a few. I think the one I'm most proud of is I started a Boys and Girls Club up in Lake Tahoe. I founded that and funded it and found the money for it. So that's probably something, like I'd leave in my will to help keep that going. I mean, I founded a bank. I raised $104 million doing that.
Wow.
Yeah, I have a lot of swimming goals, and so. But as far as business wise, it's probably the bank. My family are the bankers that built Las Vegas, so I have a million stories there.
My
And
God.
yeah, yeah. And then I've swam. I think I told you last time, I've swam the length of California and back. I swim 3 miles a week, so I've been doing that. I've swum Alcatraz 5 times. I've swam the Golden Gate once, and so.
Oh my
I
goodness.
have to have goals. I write down goals and look to see if I've achieved them. I just remember reading something a long time ago, and I think they did a study in Stanford, and they asked all the graduates what their goal was, and 20% had goals, the rest didn't. Then they interviewed them 20 years later, and the 20% with goals were all successful. The other 80 weren't, because
Oh my gosh.
they didn't have a goal.
Oh my
And
goodness.
so I write them down. I have a goal for the year, swimming, so much biking, and all that. And I make myself do it. I have a lot of stories.
You have so many stories.
Oh my God, it's so funny. It's so weird. I mean, I have a guy came up to me, or I met. They said, "Oh, you got to meet Barry Keenan," and I did. And he kidnapped Frank Sinatra Jr. in 1963.
He kidnapped Frank Sinatra Jr.?
Yeah, in 1963. There's been four kidnappings, right? It's the Lindberghs, Getty, Patty Hearst, and Frank Sinatra Jr., and he made me his trustee. I'm his trustee and his executor to make his movie, which we were trying to do with John Stamos. But just things like that, they just kind of fall into my lap. It's just crazy story, right?
Oh my gosh. I know because I've spent time with you. You've met some really interesting people. Do you have, who was the most interesting one you've met?
Well, I think the smartest, the crazy smart, like wow, is Michael Milken with Drexel. He got in all that trouble, but just you can just see the brilliance of him. And probably Steve Wynn from The
Sure.
Mirage. They both got in some trouble, but just their vision, like they looked at Las Vegas, and he said, let's put in these mega hotels. And and I know the people that got him in business, but no one takes credit for his genius. I mean, that's fascinating. I met Rob Walton of Walmart.
Oh my gosh.
They're worth what, 580 billion or something now, and
Oh my
he
goodness.
banked with me. Yeah, it's interesting, but I love the Tony Robbins way back, and he asked everybody what makes them successful, and the CEO said, "When I make $4 million a year." And then he turned to the janitor and said, "How about you?" And he said, "Every day I'm above ground." And like, what's a better attitude?
Wow.
You can't keep searching for that more money, more. And that's the sad part about America, and I'm not saying bad capitalism, but our kids are failing because of that goal. And, they're the very wealthy. I mean, the poor too, but the very wealthy are on fentanyl and all kinds of things because
Sure.
they aren't successful. You need the endorphins. I just say, and it's radical, but everybody ought to give their money back and no one inherit anything. Then they have to make it. And
Wow.
Yeah.
please, I mean, I know a famous coffee company, and it's like the guy is the fifth generation, and he's a flaming alcoholic.
Oh,
And it's the first generation, like Sam Walton. He thought of it, and then it's the second generation that kind of start floundering, and third generation they're messed up because there's no purpose. You need purpose in life, and that's the problem with these kids in prison. They get on drugs early, or they aren't wanted, and so something's got to change. I mean, to think that we have 400,000 or 500,000 homeless and over 900 billionaires.
oh,
Like there's something wrong with the system. And I tell rich people that complain about taxes. When Muhammad Ali, which is Cassius Clay, fought Sonny Liston in 1964, he won $1.5 million for the fight, and his tax was 90%.
oh,
Taxes for the rich used to be 90%. So right
Mhm.
now, Musk is even a trillionaire himself, but Bezos and Musk are worth $1 trillion.
a
So if
trillion.
if their tax was 90%, they I think they could live off 180 billion. Like you think about it, like come
Yeah.
on, people,
Right,
who's lobbying for no taxes? It's the wealthy.
right,
And I don't want to be political, but you saw when, with Trump, he had 20 billionaires behind him. Well, no, no, we know the reason, like so.
absolutely.
And that's why I don't like some of these companies. They're worth billions, and their employees can't afford a double wide.
Right.
There's something's got
Yeah.
to give, is whether it's capitalism or not. I don't know. It's then
I
go
have a
ahead.
question. Go ahead, Karen.
How, I'm so interested in your proximity to all of these extremely wealthy people, some very famous people. And yet you have such a humility about you, Joe, and you do focus on these like really fundamental things that really matter. And I wonder, is that something that comes natural to you? Is it something that you put discipline into focusing on? What can you say about that?
Yeah, I've thought about that my whole life because I was always involved. I was the president of 8 to 10 nonprofits when I was in banking to meet people and generate that. So I was going, am I doing that for business or am I doing that for my soul? And now I can do it for my soul. But yeah, I don't know where that came from, but I've always been like that. And the capitalist, socialist kind of thing, it really stemmed because I picked cantaloupes, I picked tomatoes to get through college. I chopped cotton, and you can't get kids to do that anymore. And, like I tell people, if it wasn't for the immigrants, we would not eat. Like, do you not understand that part of it? And I worked alongside of them. I used to go on strike with Cesar Chavez,
Mm.
because of the inhumane treatment of that. So, I kind of got that, like for the worker, I understand that. I mean, I'd get a big bonus. I get the largest bonus in Nevada for the bank I was working for, and I'd split it with all my employees. They got me there, and so I love hearing those stories. Like a CEO gives all his money to, and wouldn't you just love to hear Bezos,
Oh,
you
yeah.
know, giving every employee $1 million? I mean, you think about that.
That would be
The,
remarkable.
yeah, and he could do every employee. He could give them all $1 million, right?
Wow.
Because he's
Yeah.
he's worth 300 billion. Like, and so I don't know where that comes from. My parents were teachers and nurses, and both of them actually buried in Arlington. They were World War II heroes, and so
Wow.
yeah, I don't know where that comes from, but I get to see the bad side. I think that what helps me is I see the bad side of wealth. I was a banker to
Yeah.
all these really wealth and these people getting famous and they don't want to be famous. I mean, Patrick, he was drank too much and died early. It's fame. People want to be rich and famous, and I'm going, you don't. You really don't. Like you think of that, and yeah, I mean, I have all kinds of things I want to do. I want to get all the fentanyl out of our country, and so I have ideas there, but I don't know what that is. I guess it's just motivational and serotonin and just to help, just helping people.
Well,
And they just say to not be depressed with people. And I tell wealthy people that go volunteer, go give money and see it. That's
Yeah,
so good for the soul.
it
Just to
is. It
help
is.
somebody like, I look at Dave and I'm going, not that I'm going to die, but I can die now. Look what I did with Dave and what he's doing. And
Yep.
it just
absolutely.
paying it forward. And I got this gift. People trusted me because I was their banker. And so I surely gave us this gift of helping animals. We might stop animal testing. Can you imagine that?
It's unbelievable.
Incredible.
Yeah, I got to get that movie to you. It just came out, and when I get it, I'll do it. It's called The Golden Rule. Fascinating.
It's just,
It's gonna change the world.
yeah, what a great question you asked, Joe, because you're the most unique person I've met in my life, Joe, and I'm 65. In the way you have so much to say and you listen at the same time. And you have this humility, and that's really a great word for it, Karen. It's not about you, it's about helping others. And I've just very rarely run into someone that is at your level in terms of that. I just want to applaud you. What's your biggest barrier to helping justice impacted people, Joe?
Uh, just Congress, I would think, just the sentencing and then the private prisons, I mean, when you try and change things, especially when it's a huge moneymaker, people don't like that. I mean, we're affecting even with the dog, the Golden Rule program. There are huge companies in Boston and all over that have puppy mills just for dog
Oh,
testing.
shameful.
You don't even want to see it, but and then there's great programs like the Kindness Rescue. So they'll get these dogs out of or animals out of testing and they give them a great life, things like that. So
Wonderful.
I think the biggest thing is getting government to do it and get people. I don't think people know about dog testing. I mean, just the 100 million cats we kill a year because of it. And they don't know it's 10% accurate. But, if you have a kid that's dying, you're going to want them tested and get this drug on. It takes 10 years and it's not going to take that any longer to get a drug on. But I think it'd be that, the prison program, we got to wake people up and we got to get to the corporations and Congress, we need to stop private prisons. That's the first step. And if
Absolutely.
we go to the voters and the taxpayers and say we can reduce it by, what, 110, $210 billion a year, and maybe use that for prison programs, like dog programs, there's so much better. We can do a lot better. We're America. We should be able to invent and do so.
My last question, Joe. Joe, where do you see yourself in 5 years?
Golly, I probably doing the same thing, hopefully you'll have a lot more successes. Hopefully, I'm reading The Power of Your Attitude right now, and that helps you wake up joyful, which I try and do because I see so many negatives out there, I try not to let it get me down. So, yeah,
Got you.
yeah, I think I'll be doing the same thing and hopefully still in shape. And
Okay.
yeah, I'm trying to live to be up to Stan. He's 105, so I got a couple of years left.
All right.
I have a feeling you'll be there. I have a Keeping Pace Zoom every Thursday. All formerly incarcerated men and women and veterans and our resource partners are invited. It's 5 to 6 p.m. And we have come up with about 50 second chance employers in California in the last year. And we have partners like Department of Rehabilitation, Santa Barbara Rescue Mission, a very senior California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation parole officer. So we have major resources available for you, everything from housing to medical to mental wellness to jobs to apprenticeships. We've got a great relationship with Rising Scholars every junior college in California, if you have been incarcerated, they will provide all of your education, including even supplies and computers. We've got a great relationship with these colleges. So that's a little plug. And just in closing, Joe, I can't say enough about how much I appreciate how you have literally transformed my life and changed it in such a positive way. I will forever be in debt. And thank you so much for all the work you do. You are a pretty remarkable guy.
Hey, thank you, and keep up the good work.
We'll keep it up, and thank you, audience, and we'll see you all next week. Goodbye now.